Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch, your daily dose of raw liberty online at foxnews.com/freedomwatch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. President Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, has just announced and authorized that he has told the CIA that it can assassinate American citizens in direct violation of the Constitution's Due Process Clause, in violation of federal law, and in violation of treaties to which the U.S. is a party. The Due Process Clause to the Constitution states that no person, whether they're overseas or in the U.S., may be deprived of life, liberty, or property by the government without due process of law, which means a jury trial. Anwar al-Awlaki, a Muslim cleric born in New Mexico but currently living in Yemen, has been suggested by the government as the first possible target of the CIA for his alleged ties to Major Nadal Hassan, the American soldier who allegedly shot and killed 13 people at Fort Hood, Texas last November. Despite Major Hassan's actions and Anwar al-Awlaki's radical rhetoric, the Constitution to the United States was written to restrict the power of the federal government and to assign to it very specific duties. And among those duties is the implicit direction that the purpose of the government is to secure and protect the rights to life, liberty, and property. By undermining the linchpin for protecting basic human liberty, President Obama is proclaiming that the executive branch of the government of the United States of America has the explicit right and authority to murder American citizens. The extra-constitutional CIA, which has been constantly expanding its powers since World War II, has been more than happy to carry out the executive's illegal orders as American citizen Kamal Derwish was killed in a CIA drone strike in 2002. Joining me now, Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Jacob, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge. It's nice to be back.
Why do we always have these such unpleasant topics to talk about? I mean, the President of the United States of America actually announced through Admiral Dennis Blair, the Director of National Intelligence, that the CIA has the authority to execute without charge, without trial, without jury, without judge, without appeal, American citizens that it considers dangerous simply because they're not located in the United States. Where do they claim to get this power from?
Well, they claim it is the war on terror. I mean, you remember during the 8 years of the Bush administration, the battle was over torture, whether they had the power to torture people that they labeled as terrorists with no trial. Now Obama's taking it one step further and saying, well, we don't need to deal with torturing people anymore. We just kill them. And as you point out, it extends to Americans now.
It shows how the argument over torture, which we all participated in the Bush years, which, of course, we don't even know if the Obama administration is following the Bush doctrine or the Constitution on torture, has just gone to its next logical step. I can remember here at Fox arguing in the hypothetical whether or not the president could order an American killed, and everybody was recoiled at even the thought of it. Now it doesn't even make the front pages. What about the Constitution? What about life, liberty, and property? What about the very obligations imposed on the government in the document that created the government itself?
Well, that's the whole point of the document in the Bill of Rights. Our ancestors tried to protect us against this omnipotent type of power. That was the whole idea. They said, look, the greatest threat to our freedom, the freedom of the American people, is this federal government that we're calling into existence. And to protect the people from this government, we're going to have the Bill of Rights and constitutional limitations. But based on 9/11, the government found the back door around those constitutional restrictions and saying, well, as long as we're at war, we can convert this crime, this criminal offense, terrorism, into an act of war at our option, and now we can do whatever we want. We're not constrained by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We can take out anybody. And, you know, Judge, it's not just overseas, because notice that they've always claimed that the U.S. is part of this battlefield. That means implicitly that they're saying the CIA can now assassinate any American, not only overseas, but here, as long as they label him a suspected terrorist.
Well, that's probably what will come next. But if you read the Constitution, it has a couple of definitions in there. There's only one crime defined in the Constitution, and that's the crime of treason. And treason is defined as waging war on the United States or providing aid and comfort to their enemies. So even if the government were to argue that this Muslim cleric born in New Mexico was waging war on the United States, the Constitution says for an American to do that, that's a crime. And he is entitled to be indicted by a grand jury, and there have to be 2 eyewitnesses to the same overt act before he can be convicted. And the reason all of that is in the Constitution is because going back to Henry VIII, treason was the favorite crime of the British monarchs when they wanted to get rid of a political opponent. Now, didn't the president and didn't everybody who works for the CIA swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, which would include the definition of treason, which would include the requirement of 2 witnesses to the same overt act, which would include the government may not take away your life, liberty, or property without a jury trial?
Well, they may take that oath, but we all know how they feel about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. After all, let's not forget that they set up their camp in Cuba for the precise purpose of making it a Constitution-free zone, where the Constitution would not apply and they wouldn't have the interference with the federal courts. But you point out, Judge, there's no trial here. There's no judicial determination. It's some bureaucrat or team of bureaucrats that says, we have determined that that guy is guilty of terrorism, therefore we have a right to kill him.
And what are we supposed to do about it? I mean, what political suasion is there for people who leave the United States and go overseas and agitate to commit crimes of terror? I mean, can we just isolate? There he is. Can we just say that because of what we think he said to somebody in a foreign country, he's lost his right to life and American agents can just kill him? And if you argue in favor of his right to life, well, what political audience is there for that?
Well, we all know that their definition of terrorism in every government, every dictatorial regime, inevitably starts going to the area of people who criticize what the government's doing, arguing against it, arguing against the immorality. Ultimately, they start seeing those people as the enemy, people that need to be taken out. I mean, this power is the power that the Chinese communists wield, that the Soviet communists wielded, that they wield in Burma, North Korea. That's now a core feature of the U.S. government. That's not what this country is supposed to be all about, Judge, as you well know.
Neither you nor I hesitated to criticize the Bush administration when it was engaging in torture, when it was engaging in spying without warrants, when it pushed through the Patriot Act, which authorizes federal agents to write their own search warrants. There was a huge outcry over all of those things: torture, NSA spying, self-written search warrants. Why isn't there a hue and cry in the media today over the Obama administration claiming it can summarily execute Americans that it thinks have helped terrorists in foreign countries? Not that it has proven to a jury, but that it thinks it has helped Americans, attacked Americans in foreign countries.
Well, all too often, the media has become the mouthpiece for the administration, regardless of which administration is in power. I mean, and conservatives bear some of the responsibility here because they vested these powers in George W. Bush, and we libertarians kept saying, you cannot do this. You have to assume that your worst enemy is in power before you vest these powers in there. And sure enough, now Obama, who the conservatives are calling this dangerous socialist, now has all these powers that they vested in Bush.
Jacob Hornberger, always a pleasure, no matter what we're talking about. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge.